Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Alan Vey, Aventus Network CEO, and at the community's request, I'm here to answer your questions. But first, a little about Aventus for anybody new or anyone who isn't exactly sure about who we are or what we do. So everyone knows that Ethereum has expensive transactions at the moment and that they have scalability issues, right? The Aventus Network is a customizable layer 2 network that lets any business or dApp build on top of Ethereum and other chains at scale to process transactions 133 times the speed and at just 1% of the normal cost. We began with funding from CoinShares back in 2016 and have clients now including Live Nation, FanDragon, Archos Systems, Cashback App, Fruit Lab, Aventus, Vow Currency, and many more spanning various different sectors. We're on a journey to processing 1 billion layer 2 transactions, and the Aventus community can earn their share of fees through the validator registration program, which is the Aventus staking program. We are already in the middle of processing more than 18 million transactions, and if you'd like to participate, you can do so at aventus.io/ecosystem. We launched in February and are rapidly scaling up, so please get in touch if you are interested in using the network. Okay, a few updates from the last couple of weeks. We launched a new website. We've got a brand new white paper. We've hired 2 marketing managers to try and grow the community and better engage with everybody now that we've kind of nailed the fundamental utility post our February launch. We've extended the validator registration program to allow for big upcoming announcements in the next few weeks. So if you want to get involved, you can still do so. If you're not in our Telegram group or on our newsletter, then please join on the website. We're also on Twitter if you don't want to miss any of our latest updates. With all of that said, let's get into the AMA questions. Okay, so the first question is, how many tokens does the AVT team currently stake? So in terms of the founding team, every token that we kind of have, and then we have various sort of advisors and whatnot involved too. So I think 2 of the kind of validators, or should I say 500,000 AVT, is all from sort of people who receive tokens having some sort of interest in the ecosystem from the early days. So question number 2 is asking about the sort of price on the network. Now, right now, the transactions we're processing are at $1. We expect this to actually go down over time because we're still significantly below capacity. We can process sort of billions of transactions a month, right? So yes, the mechanism will be similar to the Ethereum gas mechanism, right? So free market existing. Even if the price of AVT moves around, the amount you pay per transaction will stay fairly constant. This is very important for enterprise usage to ensure that CTOs or anybody adopting this technology have sort of predictable price and don't have to take any sort of, well, the equivalent of sort of foreign currency exposure. Question number 3. So we build on Substrate. That's why we can become a parachain on Polkadot. Now, we already launched, obviously, as various others in the Polkadot ecosystem did before Polkadot launched properly and made parachains available, which means it's a little bit difficult in terms of taking a running network that we have in production with many of our clients, right? You see we're doing millions of transactions. So we could pause that, redo the architecture so that we could become a collator, I think it is, and plug into the current parachain infrastructure. Or what our preference probably is going to be is help build out support for any kind of consensus for like the likes of us that have already launched to be able to plug into the sort of Polkadot ecosystem. So that's work. We're busy in discussion with the Polkadot team at the moment, and we're busy looking at how we could potentially build this and deliver it. So definitely on the roadmap, but probably not for the next quarter or 2. So question number 4 is around decentralized governance and the allocation of funds to projects building on the Aventus network. So we currently, the network's obviously live and in production. We are launching what we call the Gateway API in probably sort of, let's say, next quarter sometime, which will make it very easy for anybody to build applications on top of the Aventus network. In line with this, we'll launch a series of hackathons and get various grants available to those who, well, first of all, prizes for winning the hackathons and grants for anybody who can kind of show that they'll bring meaningful, sustainable traffic to the Aventus network. So yes, all of that's coming next quarter. So there's a question here about media coverage around some of our partnerships. Now, we're keeping some of them a little bit more quiet. I know a few have leaked, but the quieter we keep them, the bigger splash we can make in the sort of media. Journalists don't want news to be announced before they kind of take the first sort of big press release. So we're keeping various partnerships quite quiet right now, so that when we really launch with many use cases, we can make a big splash. You can see we've hired 2 new marketing managers. We're very, very focused on starting to communicate well. We've been very much undercover until this year because we've always been about sort of fundamental utility, right? We haven't really got into the game of speculating or any of that. We've always been here for the long term. You can see we've been doing this since 2015. Took time to find our feet within the right sectors and with the various sort of market conditions over the years. But now we've launched in production with a really sort of powerful network, and we're going to get louder and louder with respect to communicating all the cool fundamentals that we have. So then question 6 is asking about how long to reach 1 billion transactions. So we launched in production in February. It took us a quarter to block down about 18 million transactions. And now on a sustainable basis, we're building up that number more and more. So, I mean, it's very difficult, right, to say what projections are. But if you just play forward the current sort of growth rates, I don't think it'll take us more than, let's say, end of 2022 to reach that number on the first time and then sustainably be processing, within that ballpark. Question number 7 is about partnerships with mainstream DeFi venues. So I mentioned before us launching the Gateway API now. What that'll really allow is for various people to start building very easily, at which point, yes, we will look for strategic partnerships. DeFi has not been our focus so far. There are various reasons for that, given the way the market looks and the kind of opportunity for sort of transaction volume within traditional sectors, but more and more it will play a role in the future of the Aventus network. Question 8. Do you know if there's a timeline for a DAO? So this is kind of similar to the previous question around the decentralized governance and the sort of pool of funds associated with that. So ultimately, yes, we've already launched the first versions of the voting for people to get involved as AVT sort of token holders. What this will ultimately result in is a system that automatically changes any parameters within the blockchain network. There will also have the ability to introduce a fee, sort of a revenue share on any of the transactions going through the network. If the validators agree there's a value add in this, that revenue would go into a DAO to be allocated by the sort of community into future projects again. So yes, it's coming. When? Depends. There are a lot of building blocks that need to get right before you get there. We want to make sure this sort of software is really bulletproof before completely letting it go into the wild. So point number 10 is around a bit of a gamification for adoption of the platform. We love these kind of ideas. We're going to be launching, as I kind of mentioned before, various hackathon and competition related options when we launch the Gateway API. So yes, something of this shape or form could definitely exist there. We're busy building out the plans, so if you have any more ideas and even this idea, we'll get put on the table and we'll try and make the most appealing sort of use cases for the community to get involved. Next question is about a 51% network attack. So there's a couple of layers of defense here, right? You can't just arbitrarily remove a validator from the network. So we require 2/3 of the validators to achieve consensus for sort of the next block to get published, shall we say. So number 1, we got the validators and their sort of incentives. Number 2, we have obviously the token itself, and having a certain number of the tokens then obviously allows you to become a validator and your probability of selection as a validator anyway. So you've sort of hit the nail on the head with any proof of stake system, right? Your security is proportional to your market cap. However, layer 2s also derive their security from Ethereum, and if you look at some of the implementations of layer 2, you get provable correctness, right? So if the validators even were to collude and they were to try to post something phony, anybody with one AVT would be able to challenge this on Ethereum and say this isn't right. Ethereum would be able to objectively conclude yes or no based on the smart contracts and kind of kick validators that weren't behaving honestly. So that's why layer 2 can be so powerful, because you can derive your security from the base chain. It doesn't just have to be from your sort of tokens. Question number 12 is about exchange listings. So, I mean, we all know the market's a little soft at the moment, right? We had a lovely bull run. Things kind of contracted a little bit. We have various proposals from exchanges that we've been discussing. We've negotiated a few that we really like. Now it's about strategic timing. So we're ready to go. We know what we're going to do. We know how we're going to make a big splash, but we want the market conditions to be right. So we're going to wait. We're going to see what happens next quarter. And when the market turns, we will kind of launch with the next bull run. If that obviously takes significantly longer than anticipated, we will reevaluate that. Question number 13 is around sort of listings and whatnot as well. We migrated all of the liquidity from Uniswap version 2 to version 3. That's what made it sort of disappear off the radar of many of the things like CoinMarketCap. But we're discussing with all of these guys. We have various options now, like I was sort of saying in the previous answer, and we'll be listed on proper exchanges soon. We got listed on Bitfinex when we launched. And then we had 3 or 4 years, obviously, of the market going down and us sort of finding our feet within the layer 2 space and building the sort of key partnerships that we have now. And we're very quiet on the marketing front. We've never wanted to artificially hype this. It's all about fundamental utility, right? Our philosophy is if you do the right things, if we're actually building a network that has serious users, serious transaction numbers and whatnot, everything else follows. You don't put the other things first. So it's coming. Now that we've launched, now that we have all this sort of fundamental traction. Question 14 is around market opportunity. So I think the approach that we take here is obviously we're in the business of owning blockchain transactions ultimately, right? We want to provide the most appealing platform for people to create their applications on top of, but ultimately we want to generate fees in the network for the validators. That's the business model. So with respect to where the opportunity in market is. Now, DeFi is an incredibly interesting space, right? Such cool, disruptive potential, but it's still in its infancy. I think it was the first quarter report from Consensus that showed us that not only, I mean, obviously you have all the people who own Ether just within sort of an exchange account or as an ETN even, right, on a sort of traditional market. Of those, a very small subset actually have Ethereum wallets and they move Ether around on the network itself. And of all of those people who have Ether wallets, 1% of them engage in DeFi. Now, DeFi is rapidly growing, but this example illustrates that it's still very small. Then we have the other side of the market, which is these huge use cases that you see sort of IBM and R3 and whatnot going after with big banking consortiums, the big sort of multinationals doing deals. Now that's very interesting as well, but typically those businesses want, very low risk. They need the guarantees from those kind of companies that, no one gets fired for hiring IBM type thing. Now, those companies are going to front 500K up front to deal with that or whatever. It's a very sort of CapEx heavy model. We see a great opportunity in between those two. So a little bit more traditional than DeFi, but not the companies that are able to spend all of that money up front. So there's a lovely segment. We started with it in live entertainment and the various other verticals that we're looking at where we can help build solutions and innovate with these companies. And then when they make money, they pay fees kind of thing. So we do a per transaction fee. We see how much they can kind of pay, what the value add is, and that's what they pay in terms of AVT transaction fees. Question 15, how do we get new clients and partnerships? It's sort of traditional business development, right? So Anna is our Chief Commercial Officer. She heads up all things growth, whether that's marketing or kind of sales, more business development side of things, partnerships, strategy. Most of the time it's Anna and me going around having conversations, right? It's strategically doing deals with investors. It's looking at various use cases for how well the tech can apply. So we'll try and flesh out the sort of top line strategy per vertical in the different sectors. And then we have a sales team who will try and sort of take what we've done there, understand it, make sort of a cookie cutter approach out of it, and just sell it again and again and again into sort of similar profile clients. It's a pretty traditional model of how we go about things. And really, I can say this year has been one of the best years so far. People are really understanding it. The risk tolerance, or at least the perception of risk of these systems, seems to be significantly lower, and people are really engaging in a meaningful way now. Question 16 is asking about Archos. And so Archos is primarily a sort of provenance solution, right? And part of that, they built an API, almost like a relayer API, where they take care of all of the crypto complexity. People can just pay in fiat and process Aventus transactions. So that is something that various people choose to use at times. It just depends on the sort of scoping once we get into the integration details with the particular client. Question 17 is around open sourcing. So ultimately this project intends to release into the community once it's fully launched, fully open, and then anybody can kind of take it and run with it. However, we want to make sure that when it's first given to the community, it's very high quality. So we intend to open source, but bits at various times, starting from least sort of security critical to most security critical, make sure the networks have a chance to operate in production for a significant amount of time and ensure that there's no sort of serious vulnerabilities, go through all of the various kinds of audits that are needed, just to make sure when we do give this to the community, it's of the highest quality. We've also just hired a developer relations candidate to really start fleshing out on the documentation side and make sure that when this comes out, it's of the highest quality. Okay, I think that's pretty much all of the questions answered there. As always, please, if you have anything else, if you have any follow-ups, ask them and I will answer them in the next session. Thanks, everyone.